Okay. Okay, here we are. This is part B for today. This is April the 14th, and it'll take a few minutes for people to find me. Hello. Good. Well, that was a learning experience, wasn't it? Oh my goodness. You can tell I'm not a techie person. I'm a knitter. Oh, okay. So even maybe if you hear me with an echo, it's better than not hearing me at all. Oh my goodness. So somebody tell me where it was that what I was talking about when I turned the microphone off. Oh. Oh my goodness. It'll take a minute for everybody to get back on here. Oh my goodness. Thank goodness for whiteboards, huh? So today we'll have a part A and a part B. I might combine them together. I don't know if I can do that. I better not try. I might erase them. Okay, so thank you, Diana. Diana said the last thing I was discussing was the edge of the hem. So on the lace wedge, so I would do a swatch and try a variety of things and see what you think looks best. Okay, so what were the questions after that? Leslie Dunn, she says she missed part A anyway. Oh, that was a glitch in the matrix, in the knitting matrix. Exactly. Okay, so does anybody else have any questions or anything you want to talk about? Oh, I wanted to talk about this. This is a pie shawl. This happens to be part of the lace skill building tutorial that I taught last year. And it was in sections like our current knit along. And I did a lot of different shapes. I didn't bring them all in here, but they're like doily size. So this was the triangle. And what I taught you, what I teach in this is how the lace moves. See how this, and I used this basic, this is like a pine cone. This is a basic lace design. And I used it throughout the whole thing and did changes to it to see how it changes. Here it's like smoothed edge, and here we're getting points. And I show you how to do that. In this particular one, I show you how to increase in lace and maintain the lace pattern, because you start down here with this portion, this triangle. You start right here, and as you add the yarn over, you're adding stitches in, right? And so then you need to incorporate those into the lace pattern so you don't get these big, thick edges that don't have lace in them. That's one of the things I taught in this lace skill building tutorial, and it's still available on Ravelry if you want to do it. And then how to make a point with your pattern. But the reason I got this back out is this is half of a square, right? It's a right triangle. And we can see that there's an increased line here, an increased line here, and an increased line here. So if it were a full square, it would be 2 columns of increases here, 2 here, 2 here, and 2 going this way on the other half of the square, right? So, and you do those increases every other row. So for a square, that would be 8 increases. There's 2 on each spine, right? On each corner. So that means that on average, in order to make something flat, that lays flat, that doesn't pucker, it's perfectly, see, that you need to have 4 increases per round if you were knitting this in a round, or per row if you're knitting it in a row. If it's half of that, there's 4, there would be 2, okay? So there's 1, 2, 3, 4. Those are done every other row. So every row for a triangle, there would be 2 increases, right? For every row. If you do them on every other row, that's 4 increases every other row. If you did them every 4th row, you know, did 4 rows plain, it would be 8 increases. See where I'm going with this? If you did them every 8th row, it would be 16 increases to keep it flat. So, and what does this sort of remind you of? Does it kind of remind you of a Raglan increase right here, right? And you do those every other row, right? So a Raglan is really a square with your head in the middle because it's got a spine here and here and here and here and here, right? Only it's more of a rectangle because you've got a wider area here than you do for the tops of the sleeve. So it makes a rectangle, but it's flat. Even though we're making it to the shape of our body, you're doing those increases. For Raglan, you do 8 increases every other row, correct? Or every other round if you're knitting in the round. So you're actually making a flat piece of fabric till you actually get down to where you're going to divide the arms off. So a pie shawl is very similar. Only Elizabeth Zimmerman, the genius knitter, Elizabeth Zimmerman figured this out, that you start in the center. She starts with 9 stitches, and then you do 1 round. Then you immediately you increase to 18, and then you work 4 rounds, and then you increase to 36, and then you work 8 rounds, and you increase to 72. And then you work 16 rounds. Do you see how the rounds are doubling? And then when it doubles, so does you increase. The stitch count is double what it was before. And that, guess what this kind of looks like? If we cut the neck out right here, it looks just like my yoke sweater, doesn't it? Look at that. We could just remove this section right here. And guess what we have down here? We have a yoke. So this is what pie shawls, Raglans, and yokes have in common. By the time you get down to the widest area, you have all the stitches you need, but it's worked so that if you opened this up, the yoke would make a big circle. And you can see everybody's yokes that they've been posting on Ravelry, which they're absolutely beautiful. The ones in my group, Knitting with Suzanne Bryan, oh my goodness, you guys are awesome. It's like all these designers are coming out of you. The work is unbelievably beautiful, but they make a circle. And then it folds in half when you separate the arms off from the body. And because, see, we're thinner here, the reason it works, because you think, okay, well, it curves down like this, right? So it should be like conical shaped. But the reason it works is because you're thinner here and you get wider, wider, wider over your arm. By the time it gets down to your arm, it's much wider here than it is up here. And that takes up where it would normally go. Let me take it off. Where it would go flat, where it would lay flat, your circle would be flat this way. The sleeves come out like this, but because the width of your arm pulls it down like this, it makes it more conical shape, okay? But this is really a full circle. If I didn't have the body on here, I could open it up and you would see. Now, Francois's husband did the most awesome thing for me, and I'm going to be putting it in with the pattern the next time I send an update because I need to write up a thing about it. But we have a picture of Amanda and with a circle, and we show how to figure out the depth of the yoke from your body, which is what we've been talking about several times. I've talked about, like, how can you tell from your body, not from a schematic, from a pattern. Let's say you want to make it up yourself. You want to make it from scratch. So you don't have a book. You don't have a pre-manufactured schematic. You're going to make your own schematic based upon your body measurements, right? How do you figure out how deep the yoke's going to be? Well, we worked on it, and I think that we have it figured out. So if you use the tip of the shoulder here, I have a black shirt on, which is a mistake. You can't see. So here we have my underarm, okay? And the tip of my shoulder right here, where you would measure down for the armhole depth, right? You use that point right there on your shoulder, and you make a right triangle with it. So you have this line coming down here. You have this going straight over to here. And where this comes and touches your neck, between there and here is the hypotenuse of the triangle. So if you know this distance from the point of your shoulder, right here, to where it touches the front of your neck and it's horizontal, do you see it's horizontal? If you know this distance and you know your armhole depth, you can figure out the hypotenuse. Now this supposes that your neck opening would start right here. What if you don't want it to start right there? What if you want it to start down here? Well, you subtract that distance. Let's say this is 2 inches from your hypotenuse. And that will tell you how deep your yoke's going to be. So you know how much area you have to put a design into. Okay, because to me, that's the important part. How do you know how much design you can put in there if you don't know how deep the yoke is going to be? Okay, so it's a really cool drawing that her husband did for me, and I'm going to add it into the tutorial knit along next time, and with directions on how to figure it out and all the writing. But isn't that cool? So you can do, you do the line here. Let me get another. So you have your depth here. You figure out your armhole depth from here, and mine's usually 8 inches. Okay, and then you would measure from that point over to here. You need to have it touch your neck, because it just so happens that this hypotenuse comes right up here to under your chin. This is the starting point right here. And so if you go over here, you're going to run into the hypotenuse at this time. And then you'll be able to tell the length of it. So a squared plus b squared equals c squared, right? And you wondered when you were in junior high and high school and you were learning that, when you would ever use it. Little did you know that knitting is math. And I've met a lot of knitters that say, I hate math. My brain just doesn't get math. Well, let me tell you, if you get knitting, your brain gets math. It's just that someone never explained it to you in a way that made sense to you. We all have different ways of learning things. And I always had, I am inherently good at math. My brain just sees it. I'm very fortunate. I was born that way. I didn't train myself to do that. I'm just very, very lucky that my my brain gets it. But my brain doesn't get it the way teachers teach it in school. And all through school, when I was in high school, I was flunking out of my math class because I got an A on every single test. I totally understood. I could answer all the questions, but I never did my homework, and I did not do the busy work because I could just figure it out. And the teacher would say, well, what's this and this and this? And I could just tell you the answer. And I know that it's right because it's reasonable, okay? But when he'd say, well, how did you get that? And I'd tell him how I got it. And he'd say, no, that's wrong. Even though I got the right answer. No, it's wrong. And I even encountered that in college. And I have a degree in business administration with a concentration in international finance. And I even had finance instructors tell me that I was not doing it right, even though I got the correct answer every single time. But my brain sees it differently. And I trust my brain. My brain is fine because I get the right answers. And there's lots of knitters like that. They encountered someone in math in high school. I'm sorry, Diana. See you later. We'll see you when you get back and you can catch up. Lots of people hate math because somewhere along the line, someone told them they weren't doing it right or they couldn't get it. Or, oh my gosh, have you ever heard a teacher, an elementary school teacher? I'm getting off onto controversial stuff. I'm going to stop in a second because you're getting my biases here. But I've heard elementary school teachers tell little students, it's okay if you don't get math because I don't get it either. And that's like, excuse me? Okay, enough of that. Well, back to knitting now. Sorry about that. That's why I say we don't discuss controversial topics. You don't want to know my point of view. Okay. Okay, let's see if there's any more questions here. Hopefully we don't have any more glitches like that. Question from Helen Henry. Question, can you please discuss what would be looked for if you were a judge if you enter item in a competition such as a local fair? Okay, I can tell you that. Number one, is it clean? Are there cat hairs or dog hairs on it? Does it have a odor like tobacco smoke or any other odor? That's number one. Is it clean? Number two, are the ends woven in appropriately? If it's color work, are the colors pleasing? If it's not color work, or whether it's color work or not, are the stitches of approximately the same size? Are the increases and decreases worked properly? Is any shaping worked properly? If it has seaming, is the seaming worked properly? Those are pretty much basic things. The most important thing, and I work at my local fair here just in help setting up. You'd be surprised how many things come in that are not clean. That's the number one thing. So if you enter your things, when they should not have been used or worn, they need to be in like new condition. If they show signs of wear, it's too late to enter them into the fair. If you're going to enter something for competition, it needs to be fresh. Oh, and blocking. Blocking is another important thing. It needs to be blocked. You'd be surprised how many people enter things in the fair that have not been blocked. Good question. Monica Klabus, question, would combination knitting, okay, that's where we were talking. Thank you. The person on here who is the expert in combination knitting is Demetria. She is a combination knitter. And combination knitting has the reputation, and it's true, of creating very, very even tension. People who use combination knitting have wonderfully even tension. But it's not always easy to do combination knitting with some of the stitch techniques. You have to be able to really think outside the box. So Demetria is an expert on that, and I pass that over to her. You can ask this in our Ravelry group, and she can get on there. There's also a group on Ravelry just for combination knitters. Aside from that, though, what you could do is try to figure out whether your knits or your purls are larger. I used to have gutters in my knitting, and it turned out that my knits were larger, although everyone will say that the purls are larger. Even well-respected knitting instructors will tell you that it's always the purls. And that's because most of those people are throwers. And I think I've told this story before, but I'll tell it again. It took me about a year to figure out what my problem was because I'm a continental knitter. And I was watching everybody knit. And I would have people watch me knit, and nobody could see anything that I was doing wrong. And they kept telling me, well, your purls are bigger. So I would keep making my purls smaller, and the problem would get worse and worse and worse. And I finally realized that it was my knits that were bigger. And I started making my knits smaller, and everything worked out fine. But that took almost a year. I did a thing in my guild one time, and I think it's on my blog. I have a blog. It's called knittingsuzanne.com, and I have a lot of stuff on there. I haven't put anything on there since last September, but there is a lot of good stuff on it if you want to take a look at it. One of the things I did at a guild meeting, we had probably about 30 people there that day, is I took yarn. I told everybody to bring a US 7 needle, and I took the yarn, so we're all using the same yarn. And I had them cast on a certain number, like 20 stitches, and knit some row, knit and purl, knit, do work in stockinette stitch. So they knit a row, purl a row, knit a row, purl a row for a while. And then I had them finish by purling a row. And then I had them mark the stitches that were on the needle with a black felt marking pin. So it made some little black marks so we could identify that the last row that was worked was a purl row. Then I had them take it off their needle, not pull it out, just slide it off the needle and cut the edge stitches off. So I think we cut off 2 columns here and 2 columns here. So we had 16 stitches remaining in the middle. And then I had them pull off the top purl strand and the next strand. So now we have 1 purl strand and 1 knit strand that didn't have any edge stitches associated with them, because edge stitches have their own problems. And we didn't want that interfering. And then we measured them. And some people, their strands were both the same length, but the majority of the room, either their knit strand was longer or their purl strand was longer. And I had them lay them all out on a table and we took a picture. And I think that's on my blog. I'm not sure, but I think it's on my blog. Then I had them pick their strands back up and divided the room by knitters or throwers, or by continental or throwing. And guess what? All the people that had a strand that was uneven in the continental group, it happened to be their knit strand was longer. And the ones that had uneven strands in the throwing group, it happened to be their purl strand. So that validated for me that I was not the only continental knitter that had enlarged knits. It happens to other people too. So it is not true when you hear someone say it's always the purl stitch. It is not true. That person is not a continental knitter, so they don't understand continental knitting. So I would try figuring out, first of all, whether your knits or your purls are bigger. Once you figure that out, then you can concentrating on tightening up on the ones that are bigger rather than loosening up on the ones that are tighter. This will make a huge difference in the quality of your knitting. Also, I have a really good video on the other YouTube channel, Knitting with Suzanne Bryan, on even tension. If you want to take a look at that, I show you how to maintain even tension, throwing and continental, and how to get a really, really nice tension. So you might want to take a look at that, okay? Good. Thank you for reminding. Joyce Nugent, question. For my cardigan, considering garter stitch for neck, button band, cuffs, and hemline, any considerations? I'm thinking of 1-inch wide button band, very narrow neckline. Any considerations? Garter stitch would be lovely. And you're going to be adding them on. You're not knitting it at the same time. Okay, you'll hear people say, well, why pick up stitches for a button band when you can just knit it in process? So you would do the first 5 stitches in garter stitch and then the rest in stockinette. Well, that doesn't, it sounds really good in theory, but it doesn't work out very well because why? Stockinette stitch has a row gauge, right? And garter stitch has a completely different row gauge. Garter stitch has a much tighter row gauge than stockinette. So have you ever seen sweaters that have a knitted on, it's knitted all in one piece, the button bands, and the front of the sweater pulls up and the bottom of the sweater pulls down because it's in garter stitch and the rest is in stockinette and kind of bubbles along here? That's why it doesn't work. It can work if you use short rows to compensate. For example, I find that I might get, let's say I get 7 rows to the inch in stockinette, I might get 9 rows to the inch in garter stitch. That means every inch I need to add a short row in the garter stitch, and then it would come out the exact same length. And I have a video on that too. But if you're picking up stitches, which is what I hope you're doing for this cardigan, you're knitting your cardigan, then later we're coming back and picking up the stitches, right? And going to do the neckline and the front band. That's okay. We're going to do the gauge stitch ratio calculations. I'll tell you how to do that when we get to that section, which is coming up very soon. They'll come out perfectly and it will look lovely. I might also suggest you might try swatching seed stitch and see if you like that too. That makes a lovely, lovely border if you do not want to have a ribbing border. Notice also if you're doing our current knit along, the itag-yoke knit along, if you purchase that and you're getting those materials, this last lesson that came out on Friday, I give you a whole bunch of samples of, and I don't have them in here, I put them away, of ribbings to use, a variety of ribbings. There's all kinds of things you can use as an edging that are really, really pretty, other than knit 1, purl 1 ribbing or knit 2, purl 2 ribbing. Great question. Okay, Kathy Trakowska says, now sound is out of sync with the video. I am having all kinds of issues. Okay. Somebody said, I love geometry, and it jumped up there. Where'd it go? I love geometry too. And I liked algebra too. I loved math. It was so fun, even though my teachers gave me a hard time. Okay. Deborah Cisneros, it's okay if you probably understand the algebra. It just, nobody's told you in a way that you understand it. You'll get it. It's okay. Okay. Bonnie Davis, our bodies and shapes are all mathematical. The numbers are different for everyone, but the principles are the same. Exactly. And that's how I teach knitting. This is exactly how I teach knitting. Leslie Dunn says she didn't understand algebra until she took chemistry. Right. So for the people that are knitting, because you're using it, if you use it like I'm talking about, you know, figuring out the hypotenuse and you understand why you're using, suddenly it goes, oh, I can get that. That's no big deal. Okay. And Kia Coppola says, yes, calculating all wrong, but the answer was right. One teacher said, I really don't know what this is, what you do here, but the answer is correct. Don't do that in the test, though. Exactly. Exactly. That's the feedback I would get, too. Okay, the pocket swatch. Yes. So I didn't knit the whole pocket because I could tell I was getting it. So this is my little swatch in preparing for my pocket. And I wanted to do this ladder back Jacquard. And I wanted to make sure that my technique looked good. And it looks fine. So I went ahead and stopped at this point and started on my pocket. So it's so cool. It's just double knitting. So you just have this fabric, the red fabric. It's like a netting. It's exactly double knitting. You're just working one stitch at intervals rather than every stitch. And then when you need the yarn on this side, it's there. But otherwise, you're just letting it float across the back of the work. And it does not, you're not having to have any, there's no catching it in here. There's no catching. So you don't have to worry about catches showing through to the front of the work. It's very, very cool. I'm going to make a video on this. And doing it in the round and flat. Now, I've never done this on a whole sweater. I have to tell you that. And I can't imagine, there's that octopus sweater that's on Ravelry that's really cool that everybody does the ladder back jacquard on. But the back of the sweater is plain. So if it's knitted in pieces, yes, it'd be convenient to do it across the front because you got the big octopus on there. But I don't know that I would do it all the way across the back like if you were knitting in the round, because that just seems like an awful lot of yarn unnecessarily. Okay. Hi, Jana from Brazil. Welcome to our group. And this is Atilia de Ensino Descendo Ideas. I have just discovered your channel here. I'm going to learn a lot from you. And Claudio Bueno, thank you, Claudio, for welcoming her. Thank you. Hello from Germany, Jumpman. Monique Clabba says, I'm measuring my stitches them as instructed on in your blog as you are answering my question about gutters. Oh, cool. Very cool. And she says, my voice is not in sync. Let's see. Maria France from Beach City, Texas. Hello. I am not seeing you out of sync with sound, but I had exited and rejoined. You are fine. Thank you. Yes, this is Judith Slouch. One of the swatch lessons will be on double knitting. I love double knitting. I love color work. And I have tons of videos on all those things already if you want to look through my videos, but we're going to do the swatches and we'll revisit those videos. It'll be fun. I think you'll like it. Okay. The ladder back Jacquard could be very good for warm mittens. You just have to do them close enough together that you wouldn't, it's just like stranded, you know, you don't want the strands long enough that you would get your fingers under them. So I put mine 4 stitches apart here. And see, it does not affect the fabric at all on the front. There's just, it's such a cool thing. And I think it's so dramatic looking. You know, I was at our local yarn store yesterday when I was knitting on this. Well, actually, I was knitting on my sweater. And it's like, you can really wow people with this because it's so dramatic looking. Okay. Any other questions? Now, I wanted to repeat, I won't be here on Wednesday because I'm going to be with my grandkids, and next Sunday is Easter, so we'll skip that. The following Wednesday, I will be here, and the following Saturday, and that's when I'm going to have more models to show you the different body sizes and how to customize garments for them and what my suggestions would be for them. You guys are so funny. You know, I find knitters to be extraordinarily intelligent people. Have you found that to be true? I think it just attracts a certain thing. We have a little thing in our brain that connects us to each other, the knitting. It's an engineering thing. And it takes smart people to get it. And you might not think you're smart, but you are smart, okay? Oh, Priscilla says, I finished my itag cardigan last Friday. I'm so happy with it. Yay! And this is Helen Hendrick question. Are you going to be teaching in person anywhere anytime soon? No, I'm sorry. I used to do that, teach at the Knit and Crochet shows when the Knitting Guild Association used to put those on. And that was a lot of fun. But you know what? It's exhausting. And you have to travel away. I might do it once in a while, but not for a living. It's just, I love seeing all my knitting friends. So if you're ever in California and you come next fall in November, we're going to have stitches in Pasadena. Let me tell you the dates exactly. It's going to be fun because that's what I do is I hang out at something like that. I might take 1 or 2 classes. Let's see, that's for 2019. Stitches is going to be the 13th. Starts November. It starts November 14th, but I go down on the 13th. That's a Wednesday. It's Thursday through Sunday. It's going to be in Pasadena, California. So if anybody's going to be anywhere near there, come by and visit. And I would love to meet you. I am going to Scotland and Ireland in a couple of weeks. If you live anywhere near there, I wouldn't mind meeting you. We're going to be doing, it's a tour type thing, so I'll be busy a lot. But I certainly would take time out to get together with somebody. Okay, anything else? Any other questions? I love that. Let's see, 2 people have said there's atmospheric conditions going on. Deborah Cisneros says there's internet glitches due to spring equinox and several planets in retrograde within a short period of time. And Eldonna Road said, I think part of the sound issues has to do with the atmospheric conditions. I watch other live streams that have had the same issues lately. How interesting. And Leah says she's trying to convince her boys to start knitting. They would love it. Yes, they would. Okay. I'm going to let you go. So there's part A and part B today. And we all learned something, right? Oh, here, Jilly Lynn says, question, the bind off of my corrugated ribbing is curling. How do I prevent this? On corrugated ribbing, what I do before I bind it off is I work like 2 or 3, depends on how heavy the yarn is. If it's fingering weight, I might work 3 rows of reverse stockinette and then bind off purlwise if you're knitting in the round. If you're knitting flat, I would do 3 rows of reverse stockinette and then, yeah, bind off purlwise. If it's heavier fabric like worsted weight, I'd do like 2 rows of reverse stockinette and bind off, and that will create a little roll at the bottom that helps pull the corrugated ribbing down. Also, blocking helps immensely. Okay, we'll see you next time. Oh, it's fun, even though we had a glitch. We're very good at last minute details. So I'll take care. You take care. Happy knitting.